Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. I think we can now get going with today's call. So firstly, thank you everyone for joining today's call. My name is Charles Green, and here at Bellatrix Software, I am responsible for creating our thought leadership. We frequently publish reports on some of the key trends in software development, covering topics ranging from agile development to the Internet of Things. And today we want to bring together much of this research to explore the future of software development over the next 12 to 18 months, as well as giving you concrete suggestions and advice for what you can do to prepare for the changes ahead. For those not familiar with Bellatrix, we are a leading provider of software development services with expertise in product and mobile application development. I should note that we will be live tweeting throughout the webinar today with the hashtag PredictionsBSF, so you can follow along with Twitter, but also use the hashtag to ask any questions you may have. And you can also ask questions using the chat box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And I'll be happy to take questions at any time during the call. I'll do my best to take them during the call, or we can take them at the end, depending on time as well. But without further ado, I want to jump right into the content to get started today. And to help set the scene, it is clear that digital technologies have continued to transform businesses at a lightning pace over the past 12 months. Whether we're talking about healthcare, automotive, or financial services, it is the software today which really makes a difference between a product success and a product failure. We talk about software eating the world because this phrase sums up how software has become the connective tissue between companies and their customers. But at the same time, as customers engage with companies via the software or via the mobile application, so the speed of reaction, the pace at which companies must respond is at multiple degrees of intensity higher than it has been in the past. And we've seen this really over the last 12 to 18 months as the executives of major companies resign or are fired because of failures directly attributed to their software. And each of the examples here on the slide differ slightly in how the software has impacted the business organization. We've seen, for example, with Volkswagen, with the emissions scandal, with their so-called cheat software that enabled their cars to cheat the emissions tests. Although in this sense, it was actually a case of the software doing what it was supposed to be doing. It was just doing something illegal. Meanwhile, with Target, actually back in 2014 now, they suffered the largest US retail hack in history when hackers installed malware on their payment systems. The security issues, but also having the right processes in place to respond once an alert was made needed to be substantially improved. And then finally, there was simply software which does not work effectively. The Royal Bank of Scotland has suffered numerous issues with its systems over the past couple of years. It has suffered more than 5 outages in 3 years, from one instance where 600,000 transfers were impacted in 2015, to systems going down on the most popular shopping day of the year in 2013, to its complete meltdown in 2012, where millions of customers were simply unable to access their accounts. And all of this was caused by a software update which didn't work as planned. So it's within this context of organizations struggling with badly performing software that we come to our first prediction. We believe here at Bellatrix that testing and quality assurance is going to get a seat at the executive table. Particularly with the rise of mobile and cloud applications, executives must increasingly focus on the importance of testing. The one statistic which I believe really stands out in this discussion is that 75% of mobile applications today ship with between 1 and 10 bugs. And it's these bugs which are now lying at the exact interaction point between you and your customer. And given this, you can no longer consider, your organization can no longer consider testing and quality assurance as a side thought. Particularly in today's mobile-focused world, where the way you interact with an organization is typically via the mobile app or via mobile channels, QA must be given and must have the same level of status and importance as development. And this is even more critical today because of the rising levels of complexity and the faster release cycles. The complexity of software today challenges even those companies which have software and technology running through their DNA. And it's going to be an even more monumental challenge for those for those less technology-orientated companies. And just to give a sense of that, the level of complexity which we're talking about with today's software, Microsoft revealed that their development environment, Visual Studio 2012, had over 50 million lines of code. It was reported that the initially disastrous healthcare.gov website in the United States had 500 million lines of code. Now that number has been questioned a little bit by some experts, but regardless, the point stands that it was hugely complex, and it was initially had a whole lot of problems, and it was widely slated by its users. So what should you do about it? When we're looking at testing and QA, the first step needs to be to elevate the importance of testing within your organization. Still too often, testing is considered to be a side thought. It's not given the same level of importance. It's not as glamorous, not as interesting for many people. But seeing what's happening with software in today's world, we really need to be giving it a higher level of importance. And by that, ask yourself questions. Do business executives understand the importance of testing and automation to your 2016 business agenda? Do they understand how testing can lower risk, how it can improve the customer experience, and how it can help you create and shift to new business models? At the same time, also examine your existing testing and quality assurance practices. Does your quality assurance practice have effective metrics in place? And by that I mean, are you evaluating the productivity, the efficiency, and the quality of your software? Are you assessing the scalability and performance of your software? And today users have less patience than ever before for badly performing software. If it doesn't perform how they expect, or it's not easy to use, they're not going to continue to use it. If they have trouble, again, their willingness to put up with software is very much limited today. Also ask yourself, are you using continuous integration? Is there at least daily integration of code into a shared repository? And are you receiving immediate automated feedback on that? And finally, are you using agile QA practices? QA should not be something that happens after the product is developed, which typically happen in the waterfall model, but are your QA engineers involved from the very early stages of the project, even during the product ideation phase and through each iteration? Again, looking at testing, we need to consider that automation is going to be, again, a critical element here, a critical element in handling this increased level of complexity. Automation is going to help lead to faster test cases and greater accuracy, particularly in complex areas such as regression testing. So if you're just getting started with automation, you need to start by identifying those processes and those workflows which can most easily be automated. And not every task is going to meet this criteria. And the way to examine this is to analyze the level of complexity. And the greatest challenge with automation in testing is when the application is in a state of constant change or flux. And so over here, every time you make a change to the application, you're going to need to make a corresponding change to the test framework. And with automation, that can cause time, effort, and budget increases. So we would first recommend that you analyze your application portfolio to determine where you can apply automation most effectively, for your particular situation. And so while automation is going to benefit your product development, it's still critical to have highly talented quality assurance individuals who can understand and implement automation where it's most appropriate. And actually looking at automation in the future, we believe it's going to increasingly blur with some of the advances we see being made with regard to cognitive computing and artificial intelligence. Although that's still very much at an early stage, there is a tremendous potential for artificial intelligence within software testing, particularly by improving the use of data and prediction. So moving now to our second prediction for 2016, Last year, we predicted that design thinking would start to transform product development, but we've found that its rise has been even faster than expected. And so we predict, if we're looking ahead to the next 12 to 18 months, that design thinking is going to continue to gain traction. This has been helped, for example, by front-page articles in the Harvard Business Review, for example, which have driven a broader business stakeholder awareness of the framework and of some of the benefits of the framework. And as a result, we believe 2016 is actually going to be the year when design thinking starts to profoundly alter the shape and the characteristics of the technology services in the outsourcing industry. We've highlighted here on this slide some data from the analyst firm Horses for Sources that found, for example, that 92% of enterprise service buyers believe that design thinking would have some to significant impact on what they're terming the shift to an as-a-service economy. We still believe, however, that the services industry has much to do to take full advantage of the power of design thinking. We believe that design thinking really helps a service provider to take full advantage, of the power of design thinking. It ensures that service providers take greater responsibility for business outcomes. It contributes to customers requesting end-to-end capabilities rather than looking for discrete service offerings. So we really see design thinking having a pretty major impact in the services industry over the next 12 to 18 months. But what should you do about it? Well, we recommend that firstly you should start experimenting with design thinking. If you're not familiar with the approach, look to courses, for example, those run by IDEO to get a head start. You can ask your service provider and your partners, what are they doing with design thinking? How can they apply it to your projects and your engagements? And just to give you an example of how design thinking can work, we have a recent engagement here at Balatrix where we were tasked with creating a mobile application that would enable a customer to withdraw money from an ATM in less than a few seconds using their phone, not a credit card. And so clearly that's a very open brief from the customer, and we had to come up with a solution of how best to do that. But it's actually here that design thinking is actually at its most powerful when a problem or a goal is not strictly defined. By using the principles of design thinking, we were able to wear the shoes of ordinary people who regularly use an ATM, and we were able to come up with fresh ideas about what was possible. We were then able to iterate through the different possibilities, create prototypes to see what worked and what didn't work, and able to overcome some of the challenges which we face regarding the technology, the connectivity issues, and the user experience. And in the end, we came up with a product which enabled a customer to be able to use their phone, go to the ATM, and get their cash in less than a few seconds. And finally, adopting design thinking is going to involve creating multidisciplinary teams. It's going to involve bringing together product managers, developers, your QA, your testers, your user experience experts, in order to bring together a diverse set of different experiences and provide different variety of inputs to really help you understand the challenge or the obstacles that your customers are trying to face or trying to overcome with your product or service. But we really see that there is a huge amount of potential for design thinking and how we approach many of the problems and many of the challenges which we face in today's world. I think it's also worth noting that agile development and design thinking are very closely related. So if you're already using Agile, you're going to be well positioned in adopting design thinking. And that's because design thinking places emphasis on creating prototypes to be able to touch and to feel and to sense the product. And based on this, you can iteratively improve. But Agile development, meanwhile, provides the structure and the processes to enable this constant iteration. It does this by using short sprints, daily stand-ups, and retrospectives, all the Agile components that we're all familiar with. And so in many cases, innovation happens at this intersection, of Agile and design thinking. And actually that's where here at Bellatrix we often found ourselves to be at our most innovative when we're able to combine our expertise in agile development, but also together with the framework and a broader perspective that design thinking provides us. So moving to our third prediction, our third prediction was that software is going to power increasingly individual customer journeys. And to put this in some context, we're already fortunate to have at our disposal incredibly powerful technology. And so while the pace of new technology development is going to continue to accelerate, we believe 2016 is going to be more about using the technology we already have to create delightful and powerful customer experiences. Product development executives will be tasked with bringing together a blend of design, technology, and customer focus as they work to create new products and services. But to create these compelling customer experiences, we will need to shift from simply better understanding the customer journey to redesigning the organizational processes to make the organization laser focused on the customer and their specific needs at each stage of the journey. And here customer journey mapping is going to be a critical tool. Customer journey maps enable you to put yourself in the position of the customer. So we know that customers are more powerful than before, and if you don't engage and delight your customers, they're simply they have the information, the power simply to go straight to your competitor. But to fully understand the product lifecycle, we've found that there's simply no better tool than the customer journey map to clearly and visually see what is required and ensure that all members of your team have the same understanding. For example, to understand how your investments in digital technologies are going to impact your customers, you can examine how the customer interacts at different touch points. So for example, along your mobile channel, your website, your physical site, particularly for example in banks or in the bank branch or in your retail store, or your call center, for example. How does the interaction between your customer and your company, how does that change over time at different points of the customer journey? And as a result, we're going to expect to see that customer experience initiatives are going to be one of the key areas of innovation spending going into 2016. And this shift is really going to change from being a reactive, something which is typically reactive amongst companies, to companies really seeking to proactively understand your customers. So what should you do about it? Firstly, understanding is key. The research you conduct is going to help provide you with the insight necessary to better understand your customer. For example, do you know if your customers are using your mobile app or your mobile website? And how does this change during the customer journey? How does your customer behavior vary across your key customer segments? And approaches such as that offered by design thinking, which we discussed earlier, will be a powerful tool in your armory. So examine the skill sets you have available, particularly with regard to having expertise, having been trained in design thinking, but also look to other individuals with different areas of expertise, particularly in user experience, for example. So in addition to better using sociological insights and the power of design thinking to understand the customer journey, data is also going to be critical. So it's going to be looking at investing in big data and analytics to better understand your customer in ways not possible before. Just to give you one example of this, we see in the emerging world of wearables, for example, that the wearables are producing a treasure trove of information about the actions of your customers. But actually here, the technology, as I mentioned before, is less about the technology in many cases than it is about creating the organization and the processes to effectively collect and to analyze and act upon all this data that you'll be collecting. Predictive and prescriptive analytics are going to be critical here to ensure that the analysis that you take and the actions which you take are taken within the time necessary that you can influence the customer at the specific point in their individual customer journey. And here you go back again to that point I made about shifting from reactive to proactive. How can you proactively alter the experience of your customers, of the customer journey at that particular moment when they need it, and when it's going to have the most impact. Before I move on to the fourth prediction, I want to remind everyone in the audience today that if you want to ask a question about anything which I'm discussing today, then please feel free to do so. And you can do that via the hashtag PredictionsBSF, where we're live tweeting at the moment, or you can use the chat box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and I'll be delighted to take any questions which you have. So moving on to the fourth and final prediction, we predict that software platforms for the Internet of Things are going to shift the focus of software product development. Some of the statistics here are pretty staggering. According to the research company IDC, by 2018 there will be already more than 22 billion IoT devices, and there are going to be more than 200,000 IoT apps and services. 1 million new IoT devices are going to be purchased every year, every hour, or every day in 2021, according to some other research. And particularly looking at the IoT apps and services, typically where a lot of the value and the customer value is going to be generated from this plethora of IoT devices which are coming into existence. And it's actually this which we believe is going to cause that the focus is going to shift away from the number of connected devices to how the IoT can create transformative customer experiences. Can we create customer experiences using the data from IoT to create powerful customer experiences? And that to do that is going to require developing powerful software platforms. It is the software platform powered by cloud technologies which is going to bring together the range of data from this explosion of IoT devices in today's world. Commentators have spoken about this, and they've described the software as the connective tissue for value creation, and it's going to become the critical aspect in driving the IoT to wider mainstream adoption. So what should you do about it? Well, given the explosive growth in the Internet of Things, particularly in the applications and the services which are imperative for creating the customer value around the devices, you should start looking at shifting some of your budget allocation towards IoT initiatives. As the IoT becomes more widely adopted, it's going to require shifts in your technology organization's processes, its culture, and the skill sets which you have. So make sure to look to see what initiatives you have available and where you can shift some of your budget towards that and towards experimenting here. But remember, this is an emerging area, so consider running dedicated Internet of Things hackathons to explore its potential with your existing products and services. And remember that hosting a hackathon doesn't need to be expensive. Typically, hackathons is about bringing together people with diverse experiences. And actually, here at Bellactrix, we've written about some of the new innovation methods, some of the innovation methods you can use in some of our white papers, and how increasingly organizations are using hackathons, for example, in order to transition and to gain that innovation, to gain some of these fresh ideas, particularly with some of these newer technologies. But remember, much of the technology we have to create transformative software products is already available. Look to products such as the Flick device or the Nest thermostat, which has got a lot of attention in the technology press, which are really great examples of taking existing technology but creating powerful experiences around them, which then customers come to enjoy and to use in their everyday lives. So with that, I want to move to a few concluding remarks regarding our predictions. And clearly, we've covered a variety of different areas. We've spoken, we've really shifted from looking at testing and quality assurance through to design thinking, through to the Internet of Things, and it's really the combination of each of these, the combination of these together, which is going to be incredibly powerful and very, very useful. But remember, as technology becomes ever more embedded in the business processes, so the potential for new business models and transformation increases. So while you may not think at the moment how you perhaps can apply Internet of Things to your products and services, well, probably your competitors are thinking about that, or there's going to be a startup in Silicon Valley looking at doing that. And you see the amount of disruption taking place, for example, in financial services, where you can look at that and you see some of the new services being offered by many of the startups in the so-called fintech world. But I think also it's worth remembering that we continue to see the shift of budgets from the technology to business stakeholders. Already today, 55% of technology spending is controlled by line of business executives, and that's a trend which is only going to continue. So if you're listening to this and you're one of the technology stakeholders, make sure you may find yourself working with different stakeholders. Are you working, for example, together with your R&D department? Are you working together closely with your marketing department to see how you can bring together and how you can utilize many of these new technologies to provide and create new products and services for your customers? So with that, I want to leave the presentation part of the call here today, and I see we do have some questions already coming in. So I just remind everyone, if you want to ask a question, you can do so via the hashtag PredictionsBSF, or you can just write a question into the bottom right-hand side of your screen into the chat box, and I'll be delighted to take them. And we have one question already, which I see, and that is, where can I read good material about design thinking regarding books or sites? And here I would say, firstly, Bellatrix is published widely on design thinking. We were one of the first companies in Latin America to adopt the framework. We have a webinar by Simone Ahuja about design thinking. So if you go to our YouTube page, you will find a webinar there that you can listen to all about design thinking. We also have blog entries on design thinking as well, where you can read about that. But I would also recommend looking at companies such as IDEO. They often run free courses, so if you're interested in doing that, you can sign up for those courses, typically in a team of your peers or your friends or with your colleagues in your company, and you can take some of those courses and at least get a basic understanding of how to use design thinking. See if any further questions have come in. Just get a few more minutes. We have one additional question coming in, which says, you mentioned Agile QA earlier. Can you give some more details about exactly what is Agile testing or Agile QA? Yeah, I can certainly do that. And Agile QA is really about bringing together some of the principles of Agile development into testing. So for example here at Bellatrix Software, we integrate, or we have our testers and our QA experts are intrinsically and deeply embedded, or they are embedded in our development team. So our developers and our testers work side by side and use the principles of Agile in testing. So typically, you will have testers and QA managers as full members of the Agile development team. The testers will be active contributors in the planning and requirements analysis. That means your QA individuals are involved from the very start. So even from sprint 0, you will have your testers being actively involved, giving feedback on the product, giving feedback on the user stories. The testers should be contributing to the user story improvements as well. And also another key part of Agile QA is automation. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that automation, particularly given the greater complexity of software today, that automation is a key part. And again, I would suggest that you can look at some of the white papers on Bellatrix's website. If you go look under Thought Leadership, you will find some white papers all about Agile QA, and you can find more information there. Let's just see if there are any further questions which are coming in. Just give it 1 second to see. Just give it a few more seconds to see if any more questions are coming in. We have one last question, which is, what do you think about the impact of 5G technology on mobile? Clearly, 5G is offering speeds beyond what we can have at 4G at the moment. But realistic, I think looking at a shorter time frame, looking at the next 12 to 18 months, clearly the higher speeds are going to be incredibly important going forward. But it's how fast is the telecommunications industry really going to shift to 5G? I think it's still very much at an early stage, and whether or not it's going to make a huge difference in the next 12 to 18 months, probably not. But you're looking at a time frame, maybe for example, in 2020, for example, when it's going to have a much greater impact. And there, I think it's going to be an exciting time to look and see what impact that's going to have, especially on the telecommunications industry. With that, I don't believe we have any further questions. So with that, I know we're at 1:30 now. So I'd like to say many thanks to everyone for joining today's call. If you have any follow-up questions that you would like us to address, then please feel free to contact us. You can see my email here on the slide. So do feel free to contact us, or via Twitter on the hashtag. This is the whole team here at Ballactrix is passionate about technology. We're passionate about the impact of technology on business. So we love to talk about it. We love to explore ideas about what's going to happen in the future. So if you have questions, or if you think there are ways in which Ballactrix can work with your organization to help your organization transition to this new world of technology, then please do feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be delighted to have that conversation. And with that, I would like to say thank you and have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Goodbye.